Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome back to the second episode of Bible Book by Book, also known as Quadruple B. I am your host for the evening. I guess just the afternoon. Messiahs and Mythology. Um, a little bit of cleaning house things to get through before we start diving into things here today. Uh, First of all, yes, today is my actual birthday. I am turning 25, and as some of you may know, I am celebrating my birthday essentially alone this year. Uh, so yeah, that's basically my entire plans for the rest of the day is to study a archaic anthology um, of a holy book and just present my findings to all of you folks at home. And thank you so much for everybody for the happy birthday wishes. I probably won't be able to keep too close of an eye on the chats throughout the rest of the stream, just because I'm going to be hopping from screen to screen, just reading my notes and everything. So just keep that in mind. If I do miss it, don't think that I won't eventually see it and that I won't appreciate it. It's just there's going to be a lot to juggle as of right now. So second point of contention is that some of you may have noticed that this is labeled as the second episode of Quadruple B, and you might be wondering, well, wait a minute, didn't he already do an episode of the second episode of Quadruple B? Focused on the pseudepigraphical life of Adam and Eve. And yes, we did do that initially. There's been a little bit of a change of plans. So I figured going forward, it's going to be a huge pacing break if we stop like for instance, if we were to do things in the pseudepigraphical order, we would have to just stop everything like right in the middle of Genesis 5 and then tackle all three books of Enoch before we finish Genesis 5 and then move on. And then, there's other books of the Bible, like the Book of Jubilees, like where the hell is that going to go? Things of that nature. So I just don't really want to deal with all that right now. We will eventually circle back around to that, but as of right now, I kind of just want to handle the canonical books of the Bible first, get those out of the way, and then we'll move on to those. Very quickly before I proceed any further, can everybody hear me okay? I do have my mini fridge plugged in as of right now, so if that's causing like a really distracting noise in the background, that's what that is. I can just unplug that if need be. I would prefer not to, but all right. Is there anything else that I wanted to address really quick? I guess also, while I have you all here, I did announce that I would eventually be doing a live stream going over the Kathleen M. Self, Valkyries are a third gender fucking essay bullshit. Looking over everything, it's just not going to be worth it because tackling the essay relies on you accepting two social predicates. A, that there are more than two genders and they are reliant on like some sort of spectrum. And B, your personality needs to be conflated with that same gender identity. So for like example, like I'm not necessarily what you would traditionally consider like a guy. Like I'm not into cars, I don't watch sports, I don't do any of that shit like that. So in her worldview, personality dictates gender. And so I would not be able to consider myself a man in that regard. It's fucking stupid, and I absolutely don't agree with any of it. But I figure it would save myself and you guys a little bit of the hassle of hearing me say, 30 times as we're reading through this fucking essay. It's like, well, that's fucking bullshit, because I feel like the takedown that I had as an aside to the Valkyrie's video was enough for that entire fucking nonsense. So if you just want to see that sort of stuff, just go back and watch that video. I'm really just I don't know. I'm at a space in my life where I just can't be fucked. So, all right. Looks like the audio is going good. All right. So let's go ahead here and well, let's do a few things here. You guys like music? Apparently, there's music now in StreamYards. Which, by the way, I apologize for the ugly duck in the upper right-hand corner, but I am not about to pay $50 a month to fucking remove that shit. That is fucking asinine. Let's see here. Yeah, that's somewhat appropriate. I think I'll keep that. Maybe I'll turn that down just a little bit, just to make sure that I'm not drowned out. There we go. Yeah, it's like hold on. I think it was like $50 for like the premium plan, and then like $40. Hold on. I got my numbers wrong here. I know I have my numbers wrong here. Shit. I know it's fucking expensive as hell. Yeah, it's $50 a month for the professional variation of StreamYard, where, I actually would be able to stream in 1080p, which is what I typically hold to the standard for my videos. I could just go for the basic package, which is $25 a month, and essentially all that would do is remove this ugly watermark in the corner, which is about the only feature I would fucking use. Blackout, I appreciate the offer. I have tried to use OBS before. The issue with that, just on my channel, is that the internet speed here in Ohio absolutely fucking sucks. So it's been a struggle. I don't know. I might have to. Maybe there is something I could play with it, like in the ingest settings and whatnot, because I absolutely would love to do OBS. It would make this whole thing look prettier. But mythology in mind, that's Italian, and I assume that says happy birthday, so thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead here, and without further ado, because I don't want to keep you all waiting too much, we do have to think about the playback. Got that going. Is that showing okay? Yeah. All right. It's showing good. All right. Excellent. Alrighty then. Music is okay. Everybody can still hear over that. Should I turn that off? I'm gonna keep it on. I'm just gonna keep my headphones out of my ears because that is a little bit of a distraction. So, actually, let's go. There we go. There's no reason that you guys need to see my fucking icon as of right now. Okay, so picking up at Genesis chapter 4. And the man knew Eve his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man with the help of Jehovah. Implying that Jehovah's been a midwife, which is really cool of him, you know? Really cool of him to be delivering babies. Whoa, hold on. Okay, yeah, this is sensitive. And again, she bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So basically in the Bible, the entire rivalry of Cain and Abel is based entirely off of their respective labors, with Cain being jealous that Abel's offerings to God granted him favor in the eyes of the Lord. We'll cover a little bit more on that a little bit later. This story, especially the later revised variation of it told in the Book of Adam and Eve, mirrors the story foretold in the Mesopotamian mythology, where the god of shepherding Dumuzid and his brother Enkidu are both trying to woo Inanna by making offerings to her, and those are really just the byproducts of their labor, being livestock and agriculture byproducts respectively. The only difference is that in this story, or rather in that story, Inanna initially prefers Enkidu, but is slowly swayed to choose Dumuzid more by an outside force, that being her brother Utu. In this one, there really is no back and forth on that. It's basically God prefers Abel's offerings, and so that's going to lead to quite a few problems later on, as we'll soon see. Woo, come on. Oh my god, the mouse sensitivity on this fucking page. Woo! Alright, that's still on screen. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Jehovah. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel, and to his offering. But unto Cain, and to his offering, he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So basically just what I was alluding to earlier. I'd like to take a quick aside here just to explain that in Jewish tradition, animals needed to be sacrificed in reverence to God, much like in pretty much every world culture. Human sacrifice is forbidding. Nobody's really been able to 100% confirm that for any culture, but that's neither here nor there. The answer given by your local youth pastor about it being symbolic of the eventual spilling of the blood of Christ to cleanse oneself of sin obviously doesn't work very well under this context. There's actually a lot of symbolism associated with animal sacrifice, as God had to have gotten those clothes for Adam and Eve from somewhere. Using a poor animal's pelt as a way to cover the shame of their nakedness is seen as a noble death for the animal, as the blood which it spilled is being put to use in forgiveness of man. In fact, later on in Hebrews 9:22, it says, "And according to the law, I may almost say all things are cleansed with blood, and apart from shedding of blood, there is no remission." I'm sorry I wasn't able to do like a little reverb effect for that. I am so ashamed of myself. Whatever are we going to do? This is what happens when you catch me live streaming, by the way. I am very socially awkward, and I just do not have all my shit together. I'm not very good at live streaming. Okay. And Jehovah said unto Cain, "Why art thou wroth, and why hast thou countenance fallen? If thou dost well, shall it not be lifted up? And if thou dost not well, sin croucheth at the door, and unto thee be its desire, but do thou rule over it. So God does some epic foreshadowing for what essentially happens at the very next day, predicting that if Cain continued to offer him piddly offerings of merely just fruit, that he would essentially be compelled to sin, which of course he was. However, this implies a precedent wherein animal sacrifice is not merely a method of atonement, it needs to be a fully regimented process ingrained in the livelihoods of the Jewish people. Otherwise, whether intentional or not, they will stray from the path of righteousness. So, essentially, it just needs to be regulated and repeated multiple times, just in order to, keep God happy. Excuse me. And Cain told Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. Now, I'm sure many of you, myself included, thought that Cain had struck Abel with an animal bone and beaten him to death. At least that's what I was told in Sunday school as a kid. Actually, my Sunday school went a bit further and attested that the bone had felt so guilty about what it had been made to do that the animal's soul actually squealed to Yahweh the moment he started beating him. And, that led to him coming down like, what the fuck is going on here? This isn't mentioned anywhere in the Bible, by the way. All it says is that Abel's blood cried to God from the ground snitching to Cain. However, an animal bone or any real method of murder is not mentioned at all, and is merely a byproduct of more modern interpretations of this story, which we see a lot of in the Bible, really. So let's go here. We are up to... No! My God, this fucking PDF. There we go. And Jehovah said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? I would like to take the time here to make another highlight, which is the recurring theme throughout Genesis, which we'll start to see as we get into some of the later chapters, of sibling rivalry. Now, later passages in the Bible attempt to alleviate these sort of quarrels, but all throughout the first book of the Bible, there are many such stories where the conflict is instigated by a jealous or otherwise antagonistic brother. Jacob and Esau, Perez and Zerah, Joseph and his 10 older brothers, and also maybe his younger brother, but I don't know. And hell, you could even make an argument for Shem and Ham, considering they were pretty much prophesied to become the forerunners for Israel's century-spanning rivalry with Canaan. In the case of Cain and Abel, their two professions, historically speaking, are at odds with each other, as homesteaders and livestock ranchers often got into territorial disputes, which both precedes this tale's publication and long preceded it. Arguably up until the Industrial Revolution, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this sort of stuff still happens today, especially in more like rural areas of the country, meaning like the empty quarter of the United States. Okay. And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now cursed art thou from the ground, which hath opened its mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee its strength. A fugitive and wanderer shalt thou be in the earth. But not eternally. We'll get a little bit more on that, as well as the punishment of the actual ground a little bit later. As of right now, let's just kind of move along. And Cain said unto Jehovah, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the ground, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall and I shall be a fugitive and wanderer in the earth. And it will come to pass that whosoever findeth me will slay me. Well, get back here. And Jehovah said, Thank you. And Jehovah said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And Jehovah appointed a sign for Cain, lest any finding him should smite him. Okay, so now we're getting into some shit. It's not totally clear as to why God decides to give Cain this protective mark. Some have postulated that he wished to reserve divine punishment of the first murderer until a later date, which doesn't really make sense since he just got done making a big stink about how harsh this exile was as a punishment, supposedly. The next theory is essentially a rejection of Hammurabi's code. God didn't want to have the actions of a murderer answered in kind by another murder, as revenge, unchecked, is a never-ending cycle in which a whole load of people would end up dead. This passage could, in theory, be used as an argument to biblical authority against the use of capital punishments, but this is an argument which is an argument which is considered by most to be by an unsubstantiated authority, and B, based off of a theory used to justify a passage which doesn't really make sense in its own context. Now, the third theory is that the Ten Commandments hadn't been published yet, so the world knew not that murder was unacceptable in the eyes of the Lord, which is, frankly, as absurd as it sounds. What I would like to know, essentially, is who does Cain think that he is going to try and come out and slay him? Because canonically, there really should only be two other people on the planet at this time, those being Adam and Eve. And I doubt his own parents are going to go full Oonga Boonga and kill their only remaining son. Remember, Seth isn't even a glimmer in Adam's ballsack yet. Also, I doubt it would be them, or any of the angels for that matter, as God could have just straight up told them not to at any time. So, are we to assume that there are just other people out there who haven't been mentioned yet? Did God create new batches of humans following the fall? Did Adam and Eve have other unspecified children? Well, the answer is probably not, and that's a bit of headcanon I'm saving for later on. And to the second quandary, a definitive no. It's specified in 424 that Seth was conceived in the absence of Abel, meaning that he was the third son of the original Genesis pair, and logically the fifth human being in total, disregarding Lilith, because that's a whole fucking mess. Even if you want to say that, again, all Yahweh would have to do is make a public service announcement not to go out seeking revenge on Cain, thus making the marking of him redundant at best and completely pointless at worst. Give me literally 5 seconds to read the next passage, and I'll get to elaborating on this. Ooh, don't go too far, you fuck. You went too far, you fuck. You went too far, you fuck. You went too far again, you fuck. And Cain went out of the presence of Jehovah and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. Alright, so, expanding on my dismissal of the idea that Adam and Eve had another some or possibly multiple other unspecified children, we now have Cain dwelling in the land of Nod, which is literally wandering, if you translate it out. And so we're led to believe that there is some physical distance between himself and any rowdy, homicidal siblings, which may or may not actually exist. So the reason Yahweh marked Cain was so that anyone passing by wouldn't try to kill him. But, again, who are these people? Well, I would like to postulate that there are entirely separate people sired by the other gods of Canaan at the time. So it's really not a big secret that at this time, Judaism was polytheistic, but with an asterisk next to that qualifier. As stated in the first commandment, "Thou shalt not have any gods before me," not "I am the only God." In fact, very little is done to disprove the existence of other gods in the area. In fact, 2 Kings kind of confirms the existence of Moloch, given the whole infidelity saga of Solomon, and the apparent success in seducing the woman that he was lusting after by praying to him. It's possible that Adam and Eve weren't the first humans, but rather the first ones created by the god Yahweh and placed in his Garden of Eden. Since the focus of this narrative has thus far been focused around these two and their descendants, there's really no reason to follow the peoples of the alternate faiths, until it is necessary to introduce alternate peoples who aren't as familiar with Yahweh and who can't jive up onto some other god's territory to tell people, who probably didn't even believe in him, not to touch this guy who may or may not have just murdered his brother. This is also kind of a much less heavy-handed explanation for the next passage that we're about to read here, which is very contentious in the history of Genesis. However, let me jump real quick back into StreamYard here, see if I missed any comments. Hello there, Sir Adamantine. Music is oh, fucking hell. Hold on here. Let me go here. God damn it. Turn down the music just a little bit more then. There we go. Like I said, I'm kind of jumping back and forth between the comment section and everything. Just checking in every once in a while just to kind of babysit for all of you guys. So yeah, Pagan Judea talk is actually a very interesting topic. I think that's going to eventually be a character study in of itself. I kind of just want to do one on basic Yahweh, and more or less a focus on like how he became from being like the god of storms in Ugarit and Canaan and all those areas, and eventually just kind of evolved into like a monotheistic god in Judaism, which I think is an interesting evolution. Okay. Supreme Bacon, what is the worst thing that God has done? Placed me on this earth just to watch me suffer. I mean, there's quite a few things that you could point to, you know, just as kind of like a gotcha statement from an agnostic or atheistic perspective. obviously what we're about to get into here, which is like the worldwide flood, but that's kind of justified in that, he's trying to purge the wickedness from the world. So I guess it was pretty bad back then. There was the whole if you turn back on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, you're gonna get turned into a pillar of salt pretty unnecessarily, which is what happened to Lot's wife. I don't know. I just something about that one always rubbed me the wrong way. But like I said, there's multiple different avenues that you can go in trying to answer that question. My goal with this series in particular is to not be one of those types of atheists, because like a lot of shows that you see like this, where they just kind of read the Bible with a slightly irreverent tone, the attitude of the hosts basically boils down to, ew, religion, that's what my grandmother believes in, that's so stupid. And it's like, no, I don't think that anybody who is religious is inherently stupid. I definitely do think that religion does have its place in the modern world. I just think that the biggest thing that I really take issue with is missionary practices, or the conversion of Gentiles, which was started by that asshole Paul, who tried to pull himself apart as a apostle in the early church. That's just like the main thing that I don't agree with. But in terms of like just having religion as a basis for like a moral compass for people, I'm totally on board with that. I absolutely am. I don't know if this is going to be too much of a side tangent and if I should just cut it off and keep reading here, or just continue on with my thought process on that. But there's a lot that I do have to say about the vanity of man, and how a lot of people's personalities anymore have become more superficial. They've replaced the idea of God or any higher power with themselves and their own self-gratification. And so I feel like that has led to a lot of hedonistic and self-destructive behavior, which can be curtailed with religion. That being said, that's more or less just one proposal to rectifying the problem. In a perfect world, I would just say everybody needs to start being more modest, but that's obviously a lot too much to ask. Okay, so either the chat is just really fucking far behind where I am right now, or you guys just didn't mind my mindless rambling there. So in any case, that's fine. But let us go right ahead and return back to this really crummy fucking PDF that I'm reading. Oh, fuck. Okay, so Genesis 4:17. This is a rather infamous line throughout the entirety of well, the Bible in general. And it all starts with the very first line. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived. So, this is just a really awkward question to kind of pose to like any sort of youth pastor or a pastor in general. They'll typically try to give like the apologist answer that this end always has been, no, Adam and Eve had other children, and they just conveniently haven't been mentioned up until now. So, you're supposed to go through the process of mental gymnastics, where you assume that this is Cain's sister, who just so happened to be in the land of Nod, away from the rest of her family, and also just so happened to marry her brother despite him killing their other brother and being exiled by their god. Or, alternatively, you could just consider my aforementioned theory so that you don't have to bend over backwards to make this narrative fit into your holy book. While I'm still on the subject, the whole protection of God might be a metaphor for how Jewish people are meant to receive and treat travelers with hospitality, and this may have been the root of the practice, though that's much more of a fringe theory, and again, based on an interpretation of the text, which really doesn't fill in the blanks for us. Continuing on, and bared Enoch, and he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. That is in reference to Cain still. So, remember earlier back when I said that he wouldn't eternally be a wanderer? Well, it's suggested by the punishment literally sent down by God Almighty, and the fact that Nod means wandering. So, you would assume that he may just be wandering around in the desert forever. In fact, I think somebody in the chats, I might have to go back and actually find who. Apologies for, fucking forgetting that entirely. Old man Balls Nagesh. Thank you for reading that, for making me read that name out loud on stream. But yeah, you when you said that you figured that Yahweh wanted Cain to rot in the desert without the release of death, that's not necessarily true. Because obviously, he's not wandering around forever. He eventually did actually settle down, get himself a wife, had himself a kid, and built himself a whole friggin' city. So, yeah. Let me scroll down here just a little bit. The next few passages of Genesis 4 are kind of bad. They all fall into like the Genesis 5 trap of it all essentially being genealogy. So we're gonna kind of breeze past all this because a lot of these guys just never get mentioned again. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mehujael. I am so sorry, I cannot fucking pronounce that name. And Mudahar begets Meth, and Meth beget Lamech. And Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. And Ada bare Jabroni, and he was the father of such as dwell in the tents and have cattle. Essentially, he's basically the father of modern homesteading, in the absence of Abel. And his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all such as handle the harp and pipe. I guess musicians. Don't get too far. There we go. And Zillah, she also bore Tubal-Cain, the forger of every cutting instrument of brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. None of that really fucking matters. The next two lines are rather interesting. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Really great to reference yourself in the third person. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man for wounding me, and a young man for bruising me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. Now, some people take this line, they read it, and they interpret it as Lamech literally killed Cain. Not just because, well, not at all because he murdered Abel, but just because he wounded him. Now, this is frankly ridiculous. First of all, Lamech admits to killing two men, one of which managed to wound him by completely unspecified means. It could have been self-defense, which is an especially problematic thing. And the other was a young man who merely bruised him. Secondly, this would mean that if he actually did kill Cain, he would have had to have killed his great-great-great-grandfather, and if he did, why wouldn't he just specify him by name? This is merely to state that Lamech committed the second and third murders. They moided him. It was in cold blood they moided him. It was the second and third moider in all of history. And all of a sudden he did it in Jersey too. And since he had the blood of two peoples on his hands, for what we can assume to be disproportionate action, this means that his punishment should be 11 times worse than whatever happened to Cain's hypothetical killer. Now, ominously, the lineage of Lamech ends here, with neither his sons nor his wives ever being mentioned again. So, take that however you wish, whether or not that was a part of his 11 times severity punishment or not. Oh, boy. And that's the end of my notes for Genesis 4. I'll just read the last two passages and then, basically summarize them. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. For, said she, God hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, for Cain slew him. Really glad that we got past that. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he was called Enosh. Then began men to call upon the name of Jehovah. Basically, like, the summary is Seth was born, and he had a lineage continuing on from here, which we're going to see more of into Genesis 5. Basically, that's the lineage that we should be following, because for some reason, Cain's lineage just got cut off rather suspiciously. So that's what's going on with that. My God, I need to hide that current comment. I'm sorry. All right. So we're going to stop sharing there for just 1 second. Oh my God, I actually forgot that I had made tickers. Yeah, go ahead, read that. It's a funny joke. Haha. Yeah. I'm just gonna try and keep up with chat here for a little bit. Mythology in Mind says Messiah's being modest. I'd have to see that. Yeah. Let's not forget who allowed the horny little gremlin with like 200 subs at the time onto his video, and then she ends up gaining like 100 overnight with absolutely no personal gain to myself. And in that way, I am no longer modest because of that humble brag. Supreme Bacon says, cool, thanks for answering. Also, happy birthday. You are welcome, and thank you. Yeah, Pyrotic is kind of parroting, well, sort of the same sort of thing that I was saying, that he always took his wife of being of non-Semitic origin. The only thing that I would correct you on is that it wouldn't be non-Semitic. Keep in mind, this is long before Shem, Japheth, and Ham, and the division of Semitic peoples, all of the fuck that Ham sired, which for some reason is still Semitic peoples, but entirely separate. And Japheth, who apologists, like, they make Japheth out to be the horniest motherfucker ever, because he's the ancestor of white people, Asian people, fucking Native Americans, just everybody who got fucking discovered after this passage of the Bible was written. Holy fuck. It sounded more like Mort from Family Guy than a New Jersey guy. Nobody said that I was a talented voice actor, which is going to be unfortunate for when we eventually do make the movie project. Spoiler alert, we're making a movie. Yay. Starring yours truly. Of course. Because, you know, I'm so modest, apparently. All right, so moving on to Genesis 5. Like I said, this is pretty much all genealogy. I have 6 notes for the entirety of the chapter, and of those notes, most of them are pretty inconsequential bits of knowledge. Surprisingly enough, though, I actually have even less notes for Genesis 6 when we get to that, but one step at a time. So let me go ahead here and get the called up again. No, not the YouTube page. There we go. Thank you. Oh, PDF, please behave yourself. I wonder if it would be easier if I just... Oh, that's so much better. Jesus. Oh, no, wait. Never mind. Fuck. I hate this. Genesis 5:1. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day which they were created. And Adam lived to be 130 years, and beget a son in his own likeness after his image. And he called the son Seth. So, I guess really the big note here that I have is that you would think that 130 years before he even had his third kid, that's some sort of poetic exaggeration of the numbers, or maybe years back then didn't mean what they do now. But, as we already established in episode 1, the day-night cycle denoted the days, weeks, months, and even years. So, to the biblical scholars, even at this time, I haven't really seen any of them do much to refute the whole literal years perspective. So, the argumentation goes that apparently after the flood, the lifespan of certain individuals seems to have been significantly reduced. This is blamed on a variety of factors, not least of all having the entire planet submerged in water would have some long-lasting ramifications for generations to come. So, I think beyond Noah, the oldest mentioned person in the Bible is Moses, and he lived to be like 120, which was significantly old for his time. I think at one point in Exodus, when we do eventually get to that, he does say, well, most people around this time only live to be about 70 or something around those lines. I don't know the exact passage. What do I fucking look like to you? A scholar? Let's see. And the days of Adam after he beget Seth were 800 years, and he beget sons and daughters. So that line right there, he begets sons and daughters. This is the canonical explanation as to where Seth's wife came from, thus continuing on the lineage, meaning that our main time biblical family tree is the incestuous one, and the one where it essentially got cut short by Lamech killing two people, possibly out of self-defense. I'm not gonna go too deep into that one, but that one was actually not elongated noses and upturned ears and cheese grater mouth teeth. That one was pretty healthy. And all the days that Adam lived there were 930 years, and he died. Wah, wah. And Seth lived 105 years and beget Enosh. And Seth lived on after and beget Enosh 807 years, and beget sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years. And then he died. And Enosh lived 90 years and beget Kenan. And Enosh lived after he beget Kenan 815 years and beget sons and daughters. And all the days of Enosh were 905 years. And then he died. And Kenan lived 70 years, which I imagine was just entirely scandalous back then. You had a child at only 70 years old? And begets Mahalalel. I should have looked up how to pronounce some of these names, especially this one, since there is something significant about Mahalalel. And Kenan lived after he begat Mahalalel 840 years and beget sons and daughters. And all the days of Kenan were 910 years, and then he died. And Mahalalel lived 65 years and beget Jared. Woo! Too far. And Mahalalel lived after he beget Jared 830 years, and he beget sons and daughters. And all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and then he died. 895, I do believe, is the record for for the lifespan of somebody in the Bible. Somebody can absolutely feel free to correct me on that one, but I think that this is the furthest anybody got. And Jared lived 162 years and beget Enoch. And Jared lived after he beget Enoch 800 years and beget sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and then he died. So now we're getting into something a little bit more interesting. And Enoch lived 65 years and begets Methuselah. By the way, if you notice any similarities between these names and the names of Cain's descendants, just note that they are not, in fact, the same people. These are entirely separate lineages. Anyway, Genesis 5:22. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Essentially meaning that while he only existed on Earth for 365 years only, he never really died. This basically just begins the Dante-like 3-volume narrative, which definitely should not have been cut from the Septuagint, by the way. And this line implies that the decay of humanity had already begun by this point, as Enoch was the only man, even as far back as Seth and Adam, to be pious enough to, quote-unquote, walk with God. They used the same terminology a little bit later here with Noah. And receive special treatment to spare him the fate of death. But we will get around to that eventually. All of my notes are very short here. So, 5:25. And Methuselah lived 807 years and begat Lamech. Again, a different Lamech. Oh, fuck. God damn it. Get back here, you piece of shit. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. 69. And Lamech lived to be 182 years and beget a son. And he called his name Noah, saying, "This same shall comfort us in our work and in the toil of our hands, which cometh because of the ground which Jehovah hath cursed." Now, what he means by this is that the earth is still cursed as a result of Cain burying Abel under the soil to conceal his crime, and it's tainted by Abel's blood. So, essentially what is implied here is that the earth now has to be cultivated and tilled and all of this other nonsense in order to produce food, whereas before, plants just kind of grew. Which makes you think why we would bother to continue trying to bury our dead if this is what got us in trouble in the first place, but yeah, okay. Anyway, and Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years and begat sons and daughters. And 2 more passages here in Genesis 5. I know, this is a very boring book. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and then he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and he had beget Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So I actually went back and I kind of did the math here. From the point at the end of Genesis 5 to the supposed creation of Adam totals 1456 years by this point, which, like I said, I would argue are literal, Earth rotating or orbiting around the sun years. Some people might try and romanticize that to be a shorter time span, but basically we're working with year 1456 AC after creation. I don't fucking know. So yeah, that is Genesis 5, one of my least favorite books of the Bible. We're actually making pretty good time. We're just now over an hour, and we really only have like one more chapter to go over. Like I said, my notes for Genesis 6 are a bit light, mainly just because it's the lead up to the flood. Everybody knows about this stuff. There's not really anything nuanced that I necessarily have to make a point about. I will state though that like I know at least 2 of my notes for this section are basically half a script in of themselves, so we will come back to that eventually. Let's go ahead and catch up with chat really quick. Crazy Human, OMG, he does live streams. This is so cool. Unfortunately, not very regularly. Last episode we did on this, I think, was like a year ago. I will absolutely try to rectify that. Like I said, I am a sad and lonely human being anymore now, so I have a lot more free time. So we could possibly be able to do another one. I think I could probably squeak another 3 chapters of Genesis into a presentation for next weekend. Possibly. Don't hold me to that, but we'll try and aim for that. We'll see if we can't do episode 3 by the 21st or 20th or somewhere in that ballpark. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, Gospel of Luke contradicts Methuselah's age at 969 versus Genesis of 807. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Again, that could be, kind of like some damage control, trying to like rectify the times. But then again, that would mean that they made the years even shorter in the New Testament. That's very interesting. Hello, Heavy Lou. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Hello and welcome to the stream. I was wondering if you would ever make a video about the Canaanites. They seem cool. Well, dear viewer. Where the hell is it? It just so happens that your boy has... Fuck this green screen. An entire compilation of stories from ancient Canaan, all of which are based off of the tablets discovered in Ugarit, and all of which actually contain the original passage. You really can't see that. I'm sorry, I have to have the background of Loki getting fucked by a horse because it is just too funny. But yeah, eventually I will get around to like adapting this book into some videos, but that's reserved for a later date. That's all I'll say on that in regards to that. Put my book away. Oh, goddamn! I gotta get another book out. No. All right, hold on. Well, I'm still stumbling over myself. Just say funny things in the chat. There we go. All right. Well, at least all the books that I need for this presentation were in my nightstand. So, because, I'm that much of a fucking nerd. Okay. I don't really see. How did you not know about this book? You have to go out of your way to seek it out, which is just shit that I do on a regular basis. It's fine. It's obsessive, and it is absolutely a problem on my end. Also, I thought it was an angel behind Loki. Well, no, it's horsecock. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. So we are about to move right along swimmingly to Genesis chapter 6, which is going to be my last chapter that I cover here today. And then I don't know, we might do something afterwards where I'll hop into like the Discord voice chat for a little bit. So anybody who wants to pop in there, you can feel free to do so. So moving right along, let me get this tab back up. And this horrible PD, this is awful. This is actually awful. I hate doing this. Hopefully we'll have this fixed by next episode. We'll figure something else out to do. So anyway, 6:1. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and took them as wives of all that they choose. This is kind of just one of those passages which ends in a massive dead end, which alludes to a much more interesting story, being that of the Watchers and the fallen angels. We will not get any of that until Enoch, when we cover it. But if you're being a Bible purist, you will never get to that point. You may never have even heard of Enoch, which is just a crying shame to everybody. I would recommend that instead of going to church next Sunday, or I guess tomorrow by this point, get on an international flight, fly over to Ethiopia, and there Enoch is considered a canonical book of the Bible. Just hear it from them. Hear the more interesting version of the Bible. In all seriousness, part of the reason why we're not even doing Enoch is probably for the same reason that it was excluded. Is just like it utterly breaks the pacing of Genesis, because you would have to stop reading in the middle of like Genesis 5 and then just hop over and then read like 3 massive books about Enoch and his travels and turning into Metatron, and it's all cool and shit, but it is definitely an investment of your time. So anyway, Genesis 6:3. And Jehovah said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for that he is also flesh. Yet shall his days be 120 years. So, kind of like what we alluded to a little bit earlier. Moses was exceptionally old for his time, and he was about 120 when he died. And that seems to be the limit that God is setting as of right now on the human condition. Genesis 6:4, one of the most exciting yet... This is really frustrating because this does not go anywhere. Genesis 6:4, the Nephilim were in the earth in those days. And after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. I am about to break so many hearts here and state that after reading this over a little bit more carefully, Nephilim are probably not the human/angel hybrids, nor are they an alternate name for the fallen angels themselves. So Nephilim derive their etymological basis from the Jewish word N-P-L. Hebrew doesn't traditionally have any written nouns, so it is a little bit hard to ascertain its correct pronunciation, but this is what most people go with. The word means to fall, though it has been argued that by looking at this through a certain grammatical context, the title can be read as those who cause a fall, meaning that these giants are actually the mortals who seduce the fallen angels in the first place. Now, don't put away your pitchforks and torches, because it may surprise some of you that the word Nephilim actually occurs 2 more times in the Bible. As I already stated, the Bible is an anthology, and so these words may not have the same context to them from generation to generation, though the example of Nephilim in Numbers definitely lends itself more to the giants transcription, as they described those in the enemy camp as Nephilim, and state that, quote, "And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sights." Which, I mean, that kind of pretty explicitly spells it out for you. Much later in Ezekiel, when Nephilim are described, they're taking up residence in Sheol, describing them as the fallen warriors of old, which I suppose could lend itself to many things, but in this context could mean the Watchers of Heaven who fell to earth, and thus were confined to Sheol for repentance for sleeping around with the mortal women, which is kind of a primitive concept which would eventually evolve into the cosmology for the persecuted followers of Satan in the later biblical folklore, which is kind of neat. I really do enjoy seeing pattern recognition like that. So we're gonna keep going here for a little bit uninterrupted because I don't really have, like I said, I don't have too many notes on this whole section. Probably because this is the most famous Bible story, like, ever. Every Christian kid has heard of this story, every Muslim kid, every Jewish kid. This is everywhere, okay? They made fucking play school sets of the Ark of the Covenant, for God's sake. So, not too much to cover. Genesis 6:5, "And Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented Jehovah that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And Jehovah said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the ground, both man and beast, and creeping things, and birds of the heavens, for it repenteth me that I have made them." I don't know why all the animals have to suffer, but yeah, sure, whatever, just go ahead and hit the reset button. Except don't, because Genesis 6:8 says, "But Noah found favor in the eyes of Jehovah. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man and perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God." There's that phrase again from back in Genesis 5, referring that to Enoch. 6:10, "And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth." They will be important later. "And earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence." Get the fuck back here, you. "And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, For the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. And now we get into 6:14. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shall thou make in the ark, and shall pitch it within and without with pitch. Oh, good lord. Okay, so you knew that I had to discuss the word ark. What initially had me curious about the use of the English word ark in this passage was the book Don't Know Much About the Bible, written by Kenneth C. Davis, which is one of my personal favorites, though his information is admittedly sometimes outdated or otherwise incorrect. Excuse me. I'd like to read for you all an excerpt from the introduction of this book, because it does paint a picture of what goes through most people's minds reading about the Ark of the Covenant and also Noah's Ark. When I was in 6th grade, a building was going up across the street from my school. Like most 10 or 11-year-old boys, I preferred watching bulldozers in action and concrete being poured to whatever was being written on the blackboard. I spent a lot of 6th grade gazing out that window. I don't think I learned anything that year. The red brick structure I watched rising with such absorbed fascination was a church. Unlike the soaring Gothic cathedrals of Europe or the formidable fortress-like stone church my family attended, this was not a typical church. It was being built in the shape of a mighty boat. Presumably, it was Noah's Ark. Most of us have a mental picture of Noah's Ark, and we all think it looks like a huge tugboat with a little house on top. Except that Noah's Ark didn't look anything like that. You can look it up yourself. Right there in Genesis, you'll find God's little instruction book, a set of divine plans for building an ark. Unfortunately, like most directions that come with bicycles or appliances, these are a little sketchy, providing little more than the rough dimensions of 300 by 50 by 30 cubits, or roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, or 45 feet high. We'll come back to that because those measurements are a little bit off, as we'll come to discover. God told Noah to add a roof and put in 3 decks. Beyond that, God's instructions came without a diagram, unless Noah threw away the blueprints when he finished. So we should count Noah putting this thing together in time to beat the rains as one of the first miracles. Many years after I gazed out that classroom window, I discovered that the original Hebrew word for ark literally meant box or chest in English. In other words, Noah's Ark actually looked like a big wooden crate, longer and wider than an American football field and taller than a 3-story building. So the architect who designed that church to look like the Titanic may have understood buttresses? I think that's that word. And load-bearing walls, but did not know his Bible. Now, Kenneth is incorrect on 2 counts here, both in the measurements of the ark, as we already mentioned, and his assertion that the ark is meant to just be a really big chest, given a little more research into the etymology of the word, as I did in my flood video. So now I would like to just reiterate that passage from the script to kind of shed light on the word being a little more multifaceted than that. So the word used to describe Noah's, let's call it a flotation device in Old Hebrew, is teva, This word only appears twice in the whole Old Testament, both to describe this floating fortress and, interestingly enough, the basket which housed the baby Moses as he was sent down the Nile River. Aaron is the name given to the container of Jehovah's commandments and is later used to describe the coffin of Joseph, the one who was almost murdered by his brothers, not the one who literally got cucked by God himself. Now, it is true that both of these words mean a storage container of sorts. So the postulation that Noah's Ark was really a chest similar to Deucalion's method of escape is plausible. However, the assertion that it's because we use the word ark in English is incorrect, as the Pentateuch makes it clear that there are differences between the two arks. Tevas are thought to be storage containers which are capable of floating on water, such as the case of Noah's teva and Moses' basket. However, there is also a postulation that what is stored inside the container is what determines the difference between a teva and an Aaron, as tevas are in both cases carrying living cargo, whereas Aarons are holding stone tablets and a corpse respectively, meaning there are earthbound containers of non-living things. So, since I did that video, I did an even deeper dive, and the words get even more muddled from there, as later rabbinic writings, or rather, through reading later rabbinic writings, we see the word teva used again to describe how the funds procured from selling a synagogue can only be used for a teva or something of greater holy significance than a teva. So what the fuck does that mean? Well, either it refers to something akin to the Ark of the Covenant, meaning that by this point the words teva and Aaron are used interchangeably, or this is a mistake, and the writer meant to say a bema, which is one of those tables where the Torah scrolls are laid out for a traditional reading. Furthermore, the definitions get twisted again, as the Jerusalem Talmud notes state that the ark was an Aaron made up of 3 tevas, with the added detail that 2 were gold and 1 was made out of wood. Interestingly, however, these boxes, or rather, the notes state that the smallest gold box was housed inside the wooden box, which was then housed inside of an even bigger gold box, and then collectively, these tevas altogether are known as an Aaron. But that also falls apart rather quickly once you read on to the very next passage. In Genesis, by the way. Which states, "And Jehovah saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was of evil Oh no, wait a minute, we already read that. Fuck. Where are we? We're right here. And this is how thou shalt make it. The length of the ark 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A light thou shalt make on the ark, and to a cubit shalt thou finish it upward. And the front door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it." So, yeah, I don't know what the hell they were talking about either. Kind of as a side note, modern Hebrew distinguishes a teva as kind of like a storage chest or like a hope chest or something, and an Aaron is basically just a closet. Point is, the word ark is probably transcribed to several different objects, all of which seem to have a commonality of containing something, but may not necessarily be a chest or a boat. But in this case, it was most likely a boat. Let's just get ready for the next couple passages here. Yeah, believe it or not, we only have one really big note coming up. And then the rest is basically smooth sailing from there. Proud of you all for making it through this. Genesis 6:17. And I, behold, do bring the flood of waters upon this earth to destroy all flesh wherein is the breath of life. From under heaven everything that is in the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with thee, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives live with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring unto the ark, to bring them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Well, too fucking far. Can you please? Thank you. Of the birds after their kind, and of the cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the ground after its kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee all food that is eaten, and gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Essentially, there's really no way to break this down and sound like a pretentious middle school English teacher. It literally is just get 2 of every animal so that they can fuck, and make sure that you bring enough food for everybody, okay? Cool. So let's talk a little bit more about cubits, because cubits are obviously what is used to measure out the ark in this story. And we're talking about a pretty diverse array of measurements depending on which culture that you choose to look at. Now, for those of you uninitiated, a cubit is defined as the length between your elbow in your arm all the way to the very top of your middle finger. These measurements were most likely taken from the monarch of any given time, in which the measurements just kind of were similar enough for them to run with it. The most famous cubit comes from ancient Egypt, wherein several measurement rods have been unearthed ranging from about 20.5 inches to 20.84 inches. So, I mean, they were roughly uniform. I guess by ancient standards this was acceptable, but I know my stepdad would be absolutely livid if a tape measure were off by 1/3 of an inch. So surely there was enough. Never mind. I'll abandon that thought. Similarly, there was another cubit measurement rod discovered in Iraq in the middle of World War I. This rod is much less consistent with its sub-measurements, though if we use it as a benchmark, the Sumerian cubit is also about 20.5 inches. Now, the Hebrew cubit is all over the place. In the 2nd century, they clarify that their cubit is about 6 handbreadths long. However, this is a closed handbreadth. So to kind of demonstrate here a little bit, I'm going to turn on the camera here again. Oh, fuck. Hold on. How do I present myself? There we are. So, the Hebrew cubit is focus. About the length from like your pinky out until your index finger here, but you have to keep your hand closed. Normally, hand breaths are measured with disappearing hands. like awkwardly put this thing right in front of my face. It's essentially stretched out as far as you can, so it would be from the tip of the thumb out to like the tip of the pinky, and so like that's about a hand breath. Not so much in Hebrew. Oh wait, nope, didn't want to do that. Yeah. Okay, now let's go back to here and get my ugly face off. There we go. So in Hebrew, it gets a little more complicated because a closed hand breath is not enough. It needs to be defined as 4 finger breaths, but not with your traditional index, middle, Duncan, and pinky fingers, but rather with the width of the thumb, which in this case is estimated to be about 2¼ centimeters. So this would mean that after you do the math, a cubit in Hebrew is about 21½ inches. Though even this measurement is contentious, as I have already pointed out. This was determined all the way back in the 2nd century AD, but even as recently as the 20th century, you've seen dissenting opinions on how long a cubit is, with some estimates ranging from 19 inches long to 22½, and even Ark Encounter, the theme park started by Ken Ham, which reportedly has full-size which is like a full-size 1-to-1 replica of Noah's Ark, complete with animatronic fucking dinosaurs. Yeah. Defines a long cubit as 20.4 inches. In any case, going by the measurements of the cubit given in the 2nd century, since that's the most involved one and, it's the most complicated one, so I assume, because math is so complicated, that is the correct measurement. This would mean that Noah's Ark would have been roughly 537.5 feet long, 85 feet and some change wide, and only about 51¼ foot tall. Presumably about 10 cubits per story. Now, I am no zoologist, but from what I gather, the Brontosaurus alone was 75 feet tall and comparatively wide. So, yeah, that little dinghy is not housing any fucking dinosaurs. That's huffing copium through the oxygen mask. I'm sorry, that dinosaurs on the Ark of the Covenant. Or not the Ark of the Covenant, Noah's Ark. Fucking hell. God damn it, Ken Ham. Alright, so I don't really have any other notes for the rest of this. Genesis 6:22, thus did Noah according to all that God commanded him, so did he, blah blah blah. That's the end. We are not moving on to Genesis 7 today. Just because I need to give a thorough look on it. But yeah, that is going to be the Bible book by book presentation number 2 in the series. So thank you all so very much for watching today's stream. thank you for hanging out with me on my birthday. I also appreciate that. If anybody has any other questions, leave them in the side chats when the stream ever does eventually decide to catch up. And I'll go ahead and answer those really quickly, and then I might jump over to Discord for a little bit, just to hang out for a bit. So, Ryan says, "Happy birthday! Thank you very much. Hello from Ireland. Love the vids. Big D Dog Gang. Absolutely. I don't know if this is a spoiler. You might have already seen this, but the next mythological character study that we are actually going to do is on the Dagda. That's actually intended to be a 5th anniversary video for the channel. So that'll be coming up, what is that, the 17th of June, provided I can get my shit together and get that thing edited in time. So Heroic had to leave. Very good. Amazon, yes, lady. I do get a majority of my books from Amazon. Thank you for doing this. You are welcome. Thank you for coming in and joining in on the stream today. Give me 1 second. I need to get something to fucking drink. My throat is getting really scratchy. I've been feeling a little bit under the weather lately, which has been just fantastic. It's been a great way to spend my birthday, being both single and sick. So yeah, this has been great for me. I think we'll give the chat maybe like another minute or two to catch up and get their questions posted into the side chat. It can be questions relating to today's video or just questions about anything in general. But let me go ahead and put this book back real quick, and then I mean, if nobody has any questions, then I mean that's fine too. I'm fine just cutting it here, but out of your misery. There we go. Okay, so Supreme Bacon also asks here, is God based off of Zeus? No. So Yahweh is the old Canaanite god of storms. He may also be Yam, the rival figure of Baal, which is why so many differences are drawn up between the two in the course of the Bible. From what I gather, though, he is not and has never been a Deus Pater, which is the archetypal god which Zeus is. Deus Pater is kind of the reconstruction of like the old Aryan language, which essentially means a sky father. And there are all sorts of these guys like all over Europe. You've got Woden, you've got Perun, Ukko, and Zeus. Also, so a lot of these guys are based off of like a more archetypal figure who more than likely had something to do with the sky, ozone, thunder, lightning, and also perennial reproduction. And so that is the basis for Zeus, who in of himself is actually a comparatively more modern god, whereas the god of the Bible, there's really no evidence of that. Like I said, we'll probably have to do a deeper dive into Yahweh eventually, give him his own character study. I don't know, for like 100,000 subscribers or something like that, something insane. He'll go ahead and get his own character study, and that'll be that. Okay. I can't see any other questions coming in, so I just I guess this will just be the end of this broadcast. So, as I always say, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. God damn it, Ryan! Ryan asked the second question. Would you rather be Parth of the Tua Dadanan, the Norse pantheon, or the Greek pantheon? Are you asking whether or not I would like to be a member, like a god, of any one of these specific cultures, or like a practitioner? That's kind of an interesting one. So, probably not the Tua, since they kind of got cucked there at the end by, you know, the true descendants of God coming in to inhabit Ireland. And so now they just kind of have to live in fear and hide in the woods and shit. So that wouldn't be too exciting. The Greek pantheon, I mean, would probably be a life full of delicacy, but at the same time, I would probably also have to be gay. So I'm not about that. I guess the Norse pantheon, really. Which, I mean, yeah, I mean, like, there's... Oh, wait a minute. What the fuck am I saying? Norse pantheon has Valkyries. Of course it's the Norse pantheon. Good God. That took way more consideration than the one-word answer. Valkyries, there you go. There's your fucking answer. So yeah, in any case, like I said, thank you all so very much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to like the channel and do all that stuff. I really appreciate you guys turning out for today's stream. And until next time, I hope you all have a God's blessed day.